So I'm in my lunch break before popping back into the Justice Select Committee's hearings of the Conversion Practices Prohibition legislation. It's a government piece of legislation which bans harmful conversion practices that are intended to change or suppress someone's sexual orientation, their gender identity, or their gender expression. The reason for the legislation is that conversion practices are based on this false belief that someone with a sexual orientation or gender identity which might not conform is broken and needs fixing. All of the submitters so far have brought some really useful perspectives. We're hearing from groups this week, but I wanted to touch on two groups who have made submissions which I think draw out the three key themes that we're hearing at the moment. First theme is that conversion practices don't work. Instead, they do really long-lasting damage. And we heard from the Auckland Rainbow Community Church. They're based at St Matthew's in Auckland. And he was saying that members of the church who he had dealt with came from a really broad-based background of participating in conversion practices from a preaching perspective, but also having had them done to themselves as younger people. Check his comments out.
Ironically, some members of our community at one stage, before they joined our church, were involved in running such courses. They thought they were healing people. In fact, they found that they were harming people and harming themselves. Other members of our church have been severely hurt by the experience and are still struggling with the implications of these experiences.
I thought the Young Nats did a great comparison. They were led by Stephanie Ann and Madison when they talked about how the evidence just isn't there for managing to convert anyone using those practices.
There is no evidence that conversion practices work. Not only is there no quantitative data that supports conversion practices, but multiple mainstream medical, mental health, human rights and religious organisations have renounced conversion practices on the grounds that it does not work and often causes significant harm. Any argument claiming conversion practices work is purely anecdotal.
The second thing that's emerging is how parents are involved in this and how supportive conversations that I might have as a mum could be misinterpreted as me trying to convert my kids to any particular belief. I think those worries are really, really visceral for parents, but they're unfounded in this, and that was very ably summed up by the Young Nationals in their comments.
There's a difference between parenting and subjecting a child to conversion practices. In the Young Nats, we respect and acknowledge that parents must be allowed to be parents, free of legal prosecution. But parenting does not include subjecting your child to conversion practices.
I think at the heart of this is the belief that church leaders, that parents who believe in their religious beliefs will still be able to hold those views and interpret whatever religious text, like the Bible, in a way which is true for them. The difference here is in trying to use those beliefs to manipulate or coerce someone, whether they're someone in your congregation or whether your child. And again, Peter Linehan from the Auckland Rainbow Church sums this up pretty well.
Lots of us have experienced in our church this experience. The church pastor or leader who tells us that LGBTQ people are going to hell because of their sexuality or their sexual behaviour. Now, I think, unfortunately, people have a right to think whatever they want to and express whatever they want to about their beliefs, and that's allowed under the bill. Actually, we don't oppose the right of people to express whatever views they want to. We want to have the freedom to express the right to contradict these views. But you see, the problem comes when the pastoral leader says, there is a way to remove what you think your sexuality or gender identity is. You can change it. That's where the pressure comes on. That's the conversion practice, which causes such harm and damage. And it's an important distinction that it's manipulative psychological practice that needs to be stopped.
The third theme that's coming through loud and clear is, again, how this affects religion as a whole and whether we should read this bill as an attack on religion. The Young Nats had some pretty clear steers on that one.
This is not an attack on religion, but a protection for vulnerable members of the rainbow community. People who are discovering their sexual orientation or gender identity can struggle to reconcile their identity with their religious and spiritual beliefs. If these people seek out support and guidance from a religious organisation, there should be no risk of conversion practices being proposed. These individuals do not need to be confronted with suggestions of being converted or changed. They need to be treated with compassion, understanding, and provided with guidance when requested. This bill ensures that's the case.
But that was also echoed by the Auckland Rainbow Church in their submission. This idea that a persecution against religion is happening here because church leaders will be restricted from coercing or manipulating people in their congregation is simply not how these guys saw it. And I agree with that. As someone who's grown up in a Christian household and my father himself is a minister, I feel that a ban on conversion therapy and on that kind of need to change someone's mind with the precepts of the Bible, with your religious teachings, is quite different from having religious views and preaching your reading of the Bible or whatever text that is. So we'll end up with Mr. Linehan's comments on that one, and I'll see you soon.
We are aware of some Christians raising the spectre of religious persecution or being unable to speak what they believe the Bible says. There's a line that needs to be drawn and drawn carefully between the expression of religious opinion, and we support the right of religious people to do that, but not the right to subject people to twisted and weird attempts of misuse.